Welcome back to the Kingsway Podcast. Hey, it's been a minute.
It has been a minute.
It's good to see you, Ryan.
It's good to see you too.
Good to see you out there in the world as well. Mom?
My mom.
We're in the middle of the Christmas season. I just came off of the hunting fields. That's why I'm wearing my hunting hat.
Yeah.
It's not true. This is $2 clearance at Walmart. So
I was going to say it was a normal white hat, and he's covered it in the neon orange blood of some deer.
If you're watching on YouTube, that makes sense. But if you're listening right now on anything else, I'm wearing a awesome skull hat.
Yeah.
That is the hunting version. I guess it's like the stand.
If you're not watching on YouTube right now, I'll narrate. He's wearing a decapitated deer head, just dripping blood.
I am wearing the standard issue when you buy a shotgun or rifle to go hunting. This is the cap that they give you.
Bright orange reflector beanie.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm wearing a +5 chainmail, +5 defense. I don't know enough.
My kids will love the Minecraft quotes, and I hope you bring your diamond pickaxe. We had a great month of Blessed to Bless, and several videos that came out. I do want to say we had one come out with a black box that had some technical issues.
Yep.
But it came together, and please fight through those. If they're a little annoying, we apologize, but the content is amazing. And that interview really was.
Hopefully we're going to be
good.
By the time this comes out, that video will be out.
Yeah.
That video at the moment we're recording is not out. So I'm going to try to put these both out today.
I think it's one of those things too that of course that's the video that has issues. Because it was one of the ones I was most excited about.
What's hilarious is the issue is a video issue, like the visual, where the screen will black out and all you will see is a black box.
Oh,
yeah.
Snaps.
It's brand continuity.
They did it on purpose.
And it was also an error.
Well, I think we're going to be buying some new SSD cards or
SD
cards because I think we've used them and they've done a great job.
I've put like 10,000 hours on this one. I've barely worked at this church 10,000 hours. Yeah.
Well, we've now moved from Blessed to Bless into Christmas season, and man, it just feels like it is flying. 1,000 miles an hour. It's already, was it December 10th today or 11th?
Yeah.
10th?
Whatever day it is.
9th.
No,
9th.
It's the 8th. Because Sunday's the 11th.
Oh, there we go. See, I'm already ahead of myself.
Yeah.
It just feels like when you're seeing this, it's going to be like whenever.
Yeah. We just put up our Christmas tree 2 days ago. Yeah. Last year, we bought presents like 3 weeks ago, and we still, at this moment, haven't bought a single thing. Yeah.
Well, and I know for me, the Christmas season with my kids and just stuff, it just seems to come in hot because school gets out, days before Christmas. And then it's like everything at the church starts to pile up, and we do a Christmas Eve service. And this year we're doing a small one on Christmas Day. And it's just going to be a wild and crazy time. So I think for everybody though, it just feels like because of coming out of COVID and just how the last couple of years have been, I think it is feeling a little bit more intense than maybe normal. And I think that's just a total adjustment. I think it's just a total adjustment from where we came from and what we went through. And I'm excited because I love the Christmas season. I think we're going to do a top 10 Christmas movies at some point, or at least a reminder of that.
The top 9 are Die Hard. And then what's number 10?
White Christmas.
Spoiler alert.
So Die Hard, is it a Christmas movie? Put it in the comments.
That'll be part of that episode, and I will defend it valiantly.
That was one of our first conversations I remember last year. It was like, is this true? But today we wanted to talk about the series that we're in, as well as evidently Die Hard. And we want to talk about the series that we're in and the season that we're in kind of a different way, kind of frame it up. This is our second year that we've done this, but we've been following and trying to technically observe Advent. And it's not in like I wouldn't call it like a super liturgical, like crazy way in the sense of like maybe which has been used in the past by the church in different denominations or different cultures around the world. Yeah, it's a very Kingsway version.
Yeah, it is full Kingsway. Yeah,
but it's been good. Last year you brought it up that maybe we should do something that leads us into anticipating Christmas in a more intentional way. And you had a plan and an idea, and it's been awesome. It really went well last year, and so we went, hey, if it's not broke, maybe this is something worth leaning into again. So if you don't know what Advent is, quick history.
Yeah. So Advent, I think it came before Christmas that people celebrated Advent. I think that's right, because I think Christmas was one of the last ones. But basically, if I can summarize it and boil it down way too far, where all my high church people are going to get mad at me for this. But basically, Christmas and Easter is like all that a lot of non-denominational churches have left in the church calendar and what happens in the year in the church. But the way, if we make each of those one day, we have 363 normal days. And then we have 2 special days in the year to remember something that happened in history, whatever. And that's the birth of Christ and the death of Christ and resurrection on that weekend. And so I was going through this master's program that started 2 years before I ever came to Kingsway. And my last year was my first year at Kingsway. And it has a lot to do with these calendar things. And I loved getting to learn about how long the church has existed. Like when we're in the US and we talk about like, oh, this building's super historical, it's so old. That's like 300 years at most. When you go to Europe, you're like, this castle is 2,000 years old, or maybe not, maybe like 1,500 or 1,000, whatever.
It depends on where you go. I mean,
they lapped us 3 times, even if it's only 1,000 years. And so taking that same idea with the church, maybe Kingsway's been around for 50-something years. Maybe the Christian church denomination has been around for 100 years, but the church has been around for thousands of years and across all these continents and whatever. So just trying to like take these 2 special days we have, Christmas and Easter, and make them even more special by learning from what other Christians across time and across our world have done. And so to put it pretty simply, a lot of them have taken Christmas and Easter, and then they have some anticipatory season before it where you feel the lack of Christmas, the lack of Easter leading up to it, and the need for Christmas, the need for Easter. And then they have Christmas and Easter, and then they have a thing after that's like extra celebratory. So that would be Epiphany and Pentecost. But I don't need to talk about those right now.
And the funny thing is, like, I experienced this, Ryan, and I'm going to put my wife on blast right now.
Oh, yeah.
But I experienced this before I ever experienced high church stuff or these anticipatory seasons with my wife's birthday, because she is a birthday week person. And so the week leading up, and then it turned into after Thanksgiving, it was like the next celebration will be December 13th. It will be, and it was like 10 days till this such and such, 9 days till, and it was a countdown. And I remember at my house, it was like the exact opposite. It was just like,
they're like, oh, is it your birthday
today? Shut up. Like, leave it alone. Like, you're not special today. No, you survived. Way to go.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, but it really was fun. And for her, it was, I'm totally joking. It was really just something that she enjoyed. She loves birthdays. She loves gifts. She loves being celebrated. And so for her, the birthday made it more fun.
Yeah.
It made it more fun. And I think what I experienced last year is you brought it up and we talked to, which I'd never observed Advent before.
To be fair, I never had either.
Okay,
I was just like, it'd be cool that I've never done.
We should
make everybody do this.
Well, and it was fun because some people had. Like several people in our church were like, "Oh yeah, we did that." Or we do.
They've come from a Catholic church, a Methodist church, because a lot of other kinds of.
One
churches.
of the things I'm choosing, I'm choosing to embrace it and to kind of see the beauty in it is, and I've always known it, but man, Kingsway is diverse in the different kind of backgrounds and faith foundations and I would even call it denominations in some ways, but also just in the formation of faith. I would call it the formation of faith almost. Like the denominations are a part of it, or the culture of a denomination may have been different than the same denomination in a different place. And I am just so proud of how united we are, because I don't feel like it comes up, so it's easy to not know that it's there.
Yeah.
But then when you talk and you have these conversations, I'm like, wow, like you were an Assemblies of God, or you were Methodist, or you were Lutheran, or you were,
And
You're a
within
Catholic. Like
within
wow.
all those, like you come to Kingsway and you ask any congregant, and there's a chance that they've prayed the rosary, and there's a chance that they've spoken in tongues. Neither of which not that we'd see somebody doing that and be like, "Hey, stop it." But those aren't things that we do. But we've benefited
Absolutely.
from gaining Christians from other churches, not stealing them, but their walk of life just leads them to our church.
Yep.
And we gain from the past churches that they've been at and how they were formed spiritually.
And I was talking to someone this morning that reminded me of what the gospel really is, and I love the way that he phrased it. He said the gospel is not a list of rules; it is a list of ways to live. That's what it is. And what he meant was there is a way that seems like life, but in the end leads to death.
Yeah.
And there is a way to live that actually leads to full life. And people treat the Bible as like a don't step on this grenade of sin, rather than seeing it as a gateway to full life. Like that, it's not something
rather than seeing it as a bear trap that you stepped in and that you're choosing to stay in. Anyway,
you're pursuing full life. And why that's cool is because I think that's what calls everybody in here. We kind of get united around that concept rather than around what's most important and what to elevate, like you're saying, even some of these things. And Advent has become one of those where like we can fully embrace it, walk with it, and hold it for a time, but it's not maybe going to be the cornerstone of something that we have to have every year.
It's not like if we don't do it, then Jesus is mad at us. But as we learn from other Christians who have done this before us, they've seen that as spiritually beneficial. And so for right now,
it leads to life.
We're doing it in a way that helps lead us to God again. And so we haven't explained Advent that well yet, so let me explain it like this. And we try to explain it this year and last year at the beginning of the season. Advent basically is a season. It's like a holiday, but over a month, where you wait on the Lord. That's it. And so what we're doing is we're waiting for Jesus to come back again and set all things right at the end of time, just like we know he will. We're waiting in the same way that the first God's chosen people did for the first coming of Jesus. We're waiting for him just like that. We're kind of identifying with the people in the New Testament before Jesus showed up, like the very few in the very first chapters. And we're kind of joining shoulder to shoulder with them as they wait on Jesus. And thirdly, we're waiting on Jesus in all the little moments, little struggles, little things we're going through right now. So in sick grandparents and in a lack of a diagnosis, but something's wrong medically, or in being laid off or whatever, in all those situations of turmoil and distress and the unknown, we're waiting on Jesus there. And so as we get into winter, which seasonally, like especially as you get into January, February, but right now for sure too, like seasonal depression creeps in, all these other things. And you could try to use the way that seems like life but leads to death, which is flooding your life with consumerism and flooding it with enough items, enough events that you aren't sad. Instead of doing that as a church, what we're saying is we recognize that things aren't the way they're supposed to be right now. And we're waiting on Jesus to come back, flex his lordship, and start setting things right, both the first time he came and the last time he's coming at the end of time, and in all these little moments that we're struggling.
And I think the beauty of this is this meets the person that they're excited about the Christmas season because there's something that's even better than all those little nuances and distractions at times. And then this meets the person that is just so scared and fearful and not anticipating what Christmas is generally set up by the world to be and what it's supposed to anticipate. Because when, I said this on Sunday, but, the place I am right now in my life is my parents are both alive. My wife's parents are both alive. We really have no one missing from Christmas right now. Like if I think about it. And that is something that can be celebrated and we can enjoy that and we can soak up the fun and we can make the phone calls and have the Zoom calls with those that aren't even here. But there are a lot of people that have either had tragedy strike before, and so Christmas becomes a reminder of those that are missing.
Yeah.
And the joy becomes a little less complete. The peace feels a little bit lacking, and the hope is something that's distant and tough to find now. And I feel that the tension of that the older I get, because I realize the space between this place and the next stage of kind of longing for things to be made right again, longing for things to be set in stone. And I think that anticipation makes me understand why Advent is so much more important.
Yeah.
Because anticipating Christmas with struggles and hardships and people missing and the pain makes it feel more about Jesus than it does about the other stuff. And I think what I love every Sunday that we get up there, because we change some things for this season to create that anticipation. We take away communion. We institute more prayer response inside the themes, because we choose 4 themes for Advent. There's potentially 5. There's another one if you wanted to throw in there. But for us, we're doing hope, peace, joy, and love.
Yeah.
And so this last week we spoke about hope. And then this week we're speaking about peace. And I think as this journey grows, you kind of see that these topics build on themselves. I mean, we talked about in our sermon planning meeting just yesterday, like hope almost feels like peace. Like, it's like if you have hope, you will be at peace. And if you have peace, man, that's a joy that can't be taken, not by circumstances, not by whatever. And it's like, if you have joy, it's probably because you're experiencing love. It's like, because love is what's required most of the time for hope, peace, and joy. That's why, Paul says they all are bound together in love. And in my mind, I'm going like, that's this season. By the time you get to the baby in a manger, which is God's expression of love to the world, that he would not stay at afar, but would come near. And that he would come as a child. I mean, it's the thing that I can't get my head around this year, is just the concept of how fragile a baby is. And that's that he would place himself in the need of humans in that way.
That when we see other pictures of Jesus in the Old Testament before, or in Revelation after, in Old Testament before, he's riding on a cloud, face shining like the sun. In Daniel 7 or 9, Daniel 7, and
Daniel
then
7.
in Revelation 1, he scares the crap out of John with the sword in his mouth and the eyes on fire. And then when he shows up, but when he shows up to be incarnate, to become a man, he's a little baby. He only needs and can provide nothing.
Well, and I think about the imagery of Genesis is these 2 humans, these human beings that have been formed out of clay and then a rib, are so fragile and in need of everything that God has given, and that he's created this almost like womb that is Eden, that is the perfect environment, that has everything they need, and that they are held in his hands, and that he walks and teaches and talks to them and is this father figure, Lord. And it's almost a reverse, where Eden is born as a child and nurtured by these 2 human beings. And this perfect thing is now born to imperfect people. And these imperfect people are going to raise the gate to the garden again. And it's just kind of this cool roundabout thing. And so anticipating that and recognizing that is what's really happening, that there's a revolution coming of kingdom work that needs to be anticipated again and excited about again and wanted. And a lot of times, if you're not hopeless right now, you will be in a little bit. If you haven't experienced some unrest and no peace, you will soon. And if you think you're happy, maybe you need to look for some joy, not just happiness, and
for some lasting foundational joy rather than situational happiness.
Some good kingdom wine. That's what joy is. And then you need to recognize that if you're not wrapped in God's love, that's probably not the hope of the kingdom. It's probably not the peace of the lordship of Christ, and it's probably not the joy that comes from knowing you're loved. And fully loved and fully seen at the same time.
I just think that the power of Christmas is amplified so much by Advent. That's why growing up, I never did Advent in the churches I grew up in and all that, and that's okay. But we did occasionally do Good Friday. And Good Friday made Easter so much more powerful.
Absolutely.
Because, I don't know, every good sci-fi or
Marvel
what's the word for like
trilogy.
older sci-fi? It's fantasy. Yeah,
Yep.
that's not exactly right, but yeah, fantasy, sci-fi, adventure kind of movie. Like if they're an incredible story that's going to last the test of time, they have the hero's gone moment, and half of them are like Tolkien and for Lord of the Rings and Lewis for Narnia, and even J.K. Rowling for Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
Were all Christians when they wrote that. I don't know how Rowling is now, and I'm not going to pretend to know, but
yeah,
but at least at the time, she had a strong Christian faith, and that leads her to think, what's the best story I can tell? Oh, the hero's got to die in self-sacrificial love and come back. Well, if the hero just loves without sacrifice and then is praised, you're like, that was an okay story.
Yep.
But if they die, and so that's that hopelessness in death and all those stories, which if you're interested in how stories impact the gospel, you should look back like 20, 30 episodes ago. We talk about stories in Christianity
2 or 3
a lot.
episodes. Yep.
Yeah. But like that hopelessness and that yearning and that longing makes the realization of it, makes actually getting that thing so much more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think my favorite part, too, about Advent is it makes me think about it way sooner, Christmas, that is, way sooner than I normally would. Like, I'm thinking about Christmas, not just as Christmas morning, or for me, the anxiety of trying to pick out the right gifts or know how much, or, and then the anxiety of who's coming over, where they're sleeping, and like what's going to happen, or the anxiety of the perfect message and like having like my mind wrapped around it. It's way more wrapped up in like, what is the fullness of what God is doing? Like, what is the fullness of what God has done? Yeah. What is the fullness of what I really hope and have peace and joy and love in?
Yeah, nobody goes through Advent and is longing and yearning for God to set all things right, and is like, man, I can't wait until that day when God gives me a George Foreman under the tree wrapped it. Like that no longer is the hope of what you need. When we put your needs in front of you, you're like, oh crap, I need Jesus.
Yep.
Like there's nothing else that will satisfy in that way. That's why I love Advent so much, is it creates this need that can only be filled by Jesus and can't be filled by going to see Christmas lights in your car with your family or whatever, however nice that is and however much. I don't want to discourage you from that. Like, do that, create those memories, create those traditions. But that's why I love Advent. It says that all of the like things you can fill your December with are never going to be enough.
Yeah.
Because when Jesus showed up the first time, he wasn't showing up to the richest nation in the world who had figured out all these healthcare things and had been free and independent for hundreds of years. He showed up to his mother and father, who had been told to go to another town by their captive government from across the sea.
Yep.
And this had been going on and off for thousands of years. And so even as like the Israelites before that are celebrating Passover, God delivering them from this captive nation, they're celebrating Passover from captivity of another. They're stay-at-home prisoners. What's that called? Where you're
house arrest.
House arrest. They're under house arrest, and they have been for a long time. So when they feel those Advent feelings, God deliver us from what we're going through. God send your Savior. It's not like God send your Savior. I spent a little too much on Christmas.
Yep.
While that is a real problem, it's God send our Savior, our Messiah, because we are helpless and hopeless.
Yep. And I feel if you're listening to this, I implore you, I challenge you, like, take these 4 topics: hope, peace, joy, and love, and genuinely ask yourself, have I put the foundations of Christmas around what God is doing in these 4 categories in my life? Like, that is the point of what we're trying to do in Advent. By the time we get to Christmas, you have asked God to be your hope. You have asked him to be Lord of your life so that the peace will flow because he's in charge, not you. You have asked for his joy that comes in a place that cannot be rusted, taken away by moss or stolen.
Yeah.
You know, like you have placed your joy in something that is a treasure that is beyond this world, and it's the knowledge and love of a Father that deeply cares for you and created you with a purpose and on purpose. And then you are surrounded by that love. And if you let those things sink in, you can have no gifts. you can be missing a ton of family. You can be having a really rough year.
Yeah.
And I think Christmas can still do what it's meant to do.
We were in our preaching planning meeting yesterday and talking about peace and different scriptures that kind of bring that to mind. And I think 3 or 4 people each brought out a separate chapter of Philippians.
Yep.
I brought out chapter 1 where Paul says, I don't know what to do, whether to live or to die for the cause of Christ. Because if I live, I get to be with you and serve you for a little longer. But if I die, I get to go be with the Lord. Yep. And he's not saying die like sick. He's saying die like killed for what he's doing.
Because he's waiting to potentially die.
Yeah. And somebody brought up chapter 2. I don't remember what happens in there after the Jesus hymn. But yeah, they were bringing up all these different chapters of Philippians where Paul over and over puts his hope and his expectation and all his thinking around Jesus being in control and him just following orders isn't exactly like the right connotation, but like him just like
Psalm 23, man.
going with the punches.
He's with the shepherd. It's what it is. It's absolutely what it is. He's like,
basically he's not in charge. He's not in charge of whether he lives or dies, whether his material expectations are met or not. And he knows that and he's okay with it.
Yep. And it's having had the year that I've had, if I pull back the curtain a little bit, and knowing that there are so many things that are out of my control and just some health things going on in my family and in my own personal life, trying to fight through some things that are just I'm predisposed. Thank you. Predisposed to have certain habits in my life that are destructive, whether it's food or laziness or, being just an emotional basket case, if I can just be really honest at times, just having moments where I feel like my emotions run my life. And I can tell that there is just a difference when I rest in what God has done versus what I can do.
Yeah.
And whether that's what I've done already or what I'm going to do. Like, there's a difference in rest. And yes, I've taken control of some areas of my life as a showing that I am allegiant to him and I'm willing to do what he asked me to do. But ultimately, if I put my trust in what I am able to accomplish, it will fail me.
Yeah.
It will fail me. And I know that if I don't place my trust back in what God can do, my hope is shallow or fleeting. My peace is fleeting. My joy is not true joy. It's happiness walking around pretending to be joy.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately that I have an experience what the gospel is really all about, and that's the love of a Father for the thing that he made that he loves. And so, and I am one of those.
If you want to experience Advent, go out and watch the 1996 classic, The Preacher's Wife, with Whitney Houston. There's a lot of, and Denzel. There's a lot of stuff in that movie that I just saw it for the first time this week, and I love that I saw it. But the premise is that one of the main characters is this Black Baptist preacher who has been trying to hold his community together and do all the hospital visits and do all the things like that out of his own power, because he doesn't believe God's going to do anything about it. He doesn't believe if his hand isn't on it, this preacher's hand, that it's going to get done. So he has to do everything, whatever. And of all the morals of the movie, one of them is, even though he's still a part of stuff, when he finally realizes that the outcome is in God's hand and not his hand, he's a lot more brave to be able to stand up to injustice. He's a lot more hopeful in what God's going to do and how he's going to continue to hold their church together as it's the core of their community and community life. And he has hope that God's going to support them through whatever financial things, and that God's going to change hearts and do things that he can't ever hope to do. That's the meaning of the Sabbath, and that's the meaning of Advent, that we're waiting on the Lord to do something, knowing that he's the only one who can.
Yeah.
That real Sabbath rest is not like necessarily being lazy. It's not necessarily like going out and having fun or eating out or whatever. Whatever Sabbath is putting your trust in God and enjoying the world he's created for us to live in.
Yep.
And just knowing that like all the Jews who had to go through the Sabbath for thousands of years before us, like we don't have to, but all the Jews who did, most were farmers. A farmer taking a whole day off, just looking at your crops, just sitting there, doing nothing, knowing that like maybe there's a mole getting in there trying to destroy stuff. Maybe there's whatever. And you're like required to take a day off. That teaches you that, oh yeah, this is in God's hands and not my hands. I'll do my part.
Yeah.
But who am I to try to control the outcome of parts of this world when I'm just one man and God's God?
Absolutely. And I think ultimately when you get to a place where you find real hope, peace, joy, and love, it flows out of you from a different place. It just does. It flows out of you from a different place. Those 6 other days change.
Yeah.
And that one day gets right.
Yeah.
And I think when you do it right, I think it actually lets you provide hope to those around you in a different way.
Yeah.
I think peace seeps out of you in a different way, joy and love. One of my favorite Christmas movies, and I know we're going to do a whole episode on this, but I think one of the major discussions when you have relatives in and you're like, what are we going to watch? That was always so hard in my house.
Yeah.
Like you're like, I don't know. We're going to make everyone happy, conservative to non-conservative to whose values and morals are we going to offend if there's one small thing in this movie, and then wanting to make sure it's actually uplifting and not like bringing down the mood.
Yeah.
Netflix has an animated movie called Klaus with a
Klaus.
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 It was Klaus. That's exactly how they pronounce it in the movie. Is Klaus.
I'm very smart.
You are very smart. So it is probably my favorite animated movie made in the last 10 years. It won like Academy nominated, blah, blah, blah for its music. But the central theme of the movie is one selfless act cannot help but spark another. And it really just does a really good job of reclaiming the Christmas story in kind of a cool way. It doesn't do like the whole like bait and switch, it's a Jesus movie thing, but it actually does a great job. And it's something that you could watch with your grandma and your kids, and everyone would find something to enjoy. And so if you're looking for a safe thing, and I promise you, if you're like a 38-year-old man who has 3 kids that you're like, I don't want to watch an animated movie, this is going to be awful. It's really funny. It makes me laugh. And also at the end of it, I don't feel like I need to go take a shower. And it's because it's good. It's a good movie. And so I think you'll enjoy it. I think your kids will enjoy it. I think your family would enjoy it. Just a easy recommendation for me wholeheartedly. Klaus. So this has been great discussion, Ryan. I really hope this has been helpful for everybody that's been listening. I love the recommendation too, The Preacher's Wife. I've never seen that, so I may go check that out.
You've never seen The Preacher's Wife?
Never seen it. Never seen it.
I say as somebody who's seen it in the past 4 days.
I love Denzel, so I'm like, all right, I'm all in. Guys, we'll have, I'm sure, some more content in the top 10 movies that aren't Die Hard coming up soon. And
because Die Hard's a given, number 1. So it's really number 2 through 11 that we're talking about.
And I hope that as you learn to follow this Advent challenge and to ask those hard questions and to dive into whether or not you've placed Christ at the center of Christmas, and that you're anticipating and excited for what he can offer, not just one day out of the year, but as something that we can continue to trust in as we lead into the season. Anything you want to add?
Just find ways, like sit down for 5 minutes without a phone, without music, whatever. Sit down and think about ways that the important stuff in your life, that you can take the outcome of that out of your hand and put it in God's hand.
Agree.
Sickness, money, whatever. Not like being reckless necessarily, but
No.
find ways to actively wait on the Lord.
And I also think anytime that you can tell God he's in charge, I mean, I think Rick Warren got it right, man. It's just not about you. So try to place God back on his throne. Even if you have things and work to do, I think calming your heart, like Ryan's saying, and reminding yourself that in the end, and God is God and you are not. And though he loves you and cares about you and has hope, peace, and joy and love for you, in the end, he is God and you are not. So, hey, thanks so much for listening. If you liked this video or you think it'd be worthy to share, we'd love to have you do that. Leave a review on one of the podcast apps that you're listening on. That would be awesome. It helps the channel get traction as well as other people find it. As always, thanks so much for listening, Mom. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Mom.
And have a great and glorious day in the Lord. We'll see you guys later.
See ya.